or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us here on GB News this morning with me, Bev Turner, on your TV, radio and online. We've got the latest from the Tory Party conference, plus our team. We'll be joined by a few key players, including Michael Fabricant. I'm going to be asking him about the very aggressive welcome that he received in Birmingham. Did you see those pictures? Plus, this hour as well, squaddies on benefits. We'll be discussing the size of that unacceptable problem, in my opinion. And I need your opinions as well, GBnews at gbnews.uk. Make sure you get in touch with all of your views as we go through the next 2 hours. But first of all, here are the news headlines with Rosie.
Very good morning. 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Chancellor is bringing forward his medium-term fiscal plan to reduce the country's debt in an attempt to reassure markets. The Office for Budget Responsibility's independent forecast will also shift forward. Now, despite a U-turn on scrapping the 45p tax rate for the highest earners, Kwasi Kwarteng insists the Tories are serious custodians of the public finances. The Prime Minister is also under pressure to outline her plans for benefits and if they'll rise to match inflation. She said this morning a decision hasn't yet been made on the issue. The Justice Secretary, Brandon Lewis, says the government has, though, for a long time protected the most vulnerable.
We've got a track record in this government, both under Liz Truss with the statement that Kwasi Kwarteng made just a couple of weeks ago, but even before that, consistently of supporting the most vulnerable people in society. That has been a guiding light for us. But what you've also seen in this package is the Prime Minister and the Chancellor delivering on what she promised she would do, which is giving us a lower tax economy to drive more growth and to get growth of the likes we haven't seen for some time now.
The Conservatives will attempt to shift the focus from the economy to immigration instead today, with a keynote speech from the Home Secretary. Suella Braverman's considering new laws to make it easier to deport people who come to the UK illegally. She's expected to promise to allow immigration that grows the economy but ends the abuse of the rules. It's also anticipated she'll ask France to stop more boats crossing the English Channel. Several train companies have reported a glitch that's preventing customers buying tickets with their cards. It's customers at Greater Anglia and Northern. They've been unable to buy tickets on the company's apps or websites. And South Eastern have said they're having problems for people buying tickets in person at stations too. All three operators say they're investigating and looking to fix the issue as soon as possible. Former nurse Lucy Letby will go on trial at Manchester Crown Court today, charged with the murders of multiple babies. The 32-year-old is accused of killing 7 babies and attempting to kill 10 more between 2015 and 2016 while working in the Countess of Chester Hospital. The trial's expected to take up to 6 months. She denies all the allegations. The inquest into the death of Chris Kaba, who was shot by police in South London, is due to be opened this morning. It will then be adjourned while the police watchdog investigates the incident. The 24-year-old was killed after a police car chase last month. Kaba was unarmed. The officer who shot him has been suspended from duty. The former Formula One boss, Bernie Ecclestone, has arrived at Southwark Crown Court to enter a formal plea on fraud charges. The 91-year-old faces 1 count of fraud by making false representations and failing to declare £400 million worth of assets to the UK Exchequer. The charge relates to a trust set up for his 3 daughters. Prosecutors say the alleged offence took place between July 2013 and October 2016. The first preliminary hearing of the UK COVID public inquiry will begin today. The inquiry will examine the UK's response to and the impact of the pandemic and aims to learn lessons for the future. Families who lost loved ones in the pandemic are expected to attend, and they're hoping for reassurance they'll be able to share their stories with the inquiry directly. Well, it's expected to hold its first evidence hearings in late spring of 2023. International news now, and North Korea's fired a ballistic missile over Japan for the first time in 5 years. Citizens in northern Japan were ordered to take cover, and some transport was suspended. The launch is Pyongyang's 5th in 10 days. Japan's Prime Minister described the attack as barbaric.
North Korea has fired a ballistic missile. It flew over our country, and we believe it fell in the Pacific Ocean. It's another barbaric action again after the repeated ballistic missile launches, and we strongly condemn this.
Ukrainian forces have made their most significant gains in the south of the country since the war began, seizing back more territory in areas that have been annexed by Russia. The breakthrough in the south mirrors recent advances in the east, despite Russia ordering the mobilization of 300,000 troops and threatening nuclear retaliation. Meanwhile, Russian lawyers say they're being overwhelmed by requests for help from those at risk of being sent to fight in Ukraine. Now, back here in the UK, the Prince of Wales will deliver his first speech today since he gained his new title. Prince William will be at the Science Museum in London to address the United for Wildlife's Global Summit. He helped found the organisation in 2014 with the aim of protecting endangered species from the illegal wildlife trade. His speech will highlight the damage caused by wildlife crime and the impact on biodiversity and local communities. You're up to date now on GB News. I'll bring you more as it develops. Now let's head back to Beverley for today's To The Point.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me, Bev Turner, on GB News. Now until 12 o'clock, we're on TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you this morning to kickstart your day. Here is what's coming up. Tory turmoil. As day 3 of the Conservative Party conference starts, we've had one screeching U-turn over tax. Could there be more internal rows over benefit payments and government spending? We are the People's Channel, so we want to know what you think about what is going on at the conference. Is Liz Truss right to change direction, or should she have stuck to her guns? Let us know what you think. Thousands of British Armed Forces personnel are claiming benefits just to make ends meet in the UK. How is it possibly right that troops who could be deployed to the front line are themselves on the breadline? I'm going to be getting stuck into that a little bit later. If you've got experience of that, do get in touch with me, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.uk. All of that coming up and much more across the programme. And get in touch with me, as I say, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Right, we are going to be going back and forward as much as we can this morning to the Tory Party conference to speak to Tom Harwood, Liam Halligan. A lot of our team are there. They're going to be talking to MPs, as am I. So do stay tuned for that. It is fair to say that Liz Truss might have hoped for a better first Conservative Party conference as party leader and Prime Minister. She's facing criticism from some within her party over potential plans to make real-term cuts to benefits. This follows yesterday's U-turn by the Chancellor abandoning the cut to the 45p tax rate. Our political reporter, Catherine Forster, has done a little package here to explain how yesterday's dramatic developments unfolded.
Evening, Prime Minister.
Only 4 weeks into her premiership, Liz Truss swept in, saying she didn't care about being unpopular. And on Sunday, she doubled down on the plan to cut the top rate of income tax from 45p. She and the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, were not for turning. Until they did. As the sun came up over the second day of party conference in Birmingham, attendees woke to a tweet from the Chancellor admitting they had got it. They had listened. The cut was not going ahead. The Prime Minister tagged along in a similar fashion, outlining that she also got it. Michael Gove and Grant Shapps 2 former cabinet ministers banished to the backbenchers by Truss had led the charge among Tory MPs to stop the move. Polling showed the public were largely against it, rattling Conservatives in seats previously thought safe. Number 10 realised they didn't have the numbers to get it through Parliament. Whilst the move may have eased some Tory nerves, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves warned the damage was already done.
The government now need to get a grip. They should reverse their budget, recall Parliament to do so, and rethink their whole approach, which is doing such damage to ordinary working people and businesses across our country.
So all eyes were on the Chancellor as he made his speech to conference.
What a day. It has been tough, but we need to focus on the job in hand. The plan put forward only 10 days ago has caused a little turbulence. I get it. We are listening and have listened. That is why, shortly, we will publish our medium-term fiscal plan, setting out our approach more fully.
MPs are relieved that what many saw as a politically toxic policy is gone. But the party is still divided, and some see the U-turn as a sign of weakness. Liz Truss, it turns out, can and does turn, and there are limits to how unpopular even she is willing to be. Kwarteng and Truss will hope they can move on from this, build back support, and prove their critics wrong. Catherine Forster, GB News.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that job, would you? Joining us now from the Tory Party conference is Shankar Singham, international trade expert and government advisor. Shankar, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you're very busy down there this morning. It seems like a very shambolic start. How does the government now inspire confidence in the markets? Because at the moment, that is still a very important aim of theirs, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what needs to happen, Bev, is that they've got to be very clear about what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it. We've had a series of, over the last, it's not just the last few years, it's the last several decades, really, of market distortions, barriers, regulatory problems in the UK economy that have led to higher costs, higher prices for consumers, and less dynamism, frankly, in the market. And I think what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are trying to do is address that issue sort of head on. It's difficult. Regulatory reform is very difficult, but they need to get back to the issues that they have to address. And as the Chancellor said yesterday, we've got to get back to the growth plan, get back to the growth agenda. Unfortunately, this top rate of tax issue, which didn't really make that much. It was about £2 billion worth of borrowing. It wasn't a huge amount, and arguably it may not even have been that. But it was an enormous distraction, and we need to get back to talking about regulatory reform, driving down cost for people, for households, in their critical things like food, energy, housing, transportation. There needs to be a lot of reform in all of these sectors that will give people, ultimately, at the end of the week, their weekly shopping basket of those things will be cheaper, and that's what we've got to deliver.
Well, the thing is, we were talking to Frank Lunds yesterday, brilliant political commentator, great experience across the world, and he was saying the problem with the Conservatives is using phrases like regulatory reform, supply-side economics. The public don't really understand what you mean by that, Shankar, so can you just put it in plain English for our viewers to get what that might mean in their shopping trolley?
Absolutely. So basically, at the end of the week, you pay for things like energy, you pay for your food, you pay for your housing and so forth. Now, in each of those sectors, the companies that are delivering those things, whether it's your rail journey or your food that you buy in the supermarket or whatever it happens to be, there are a series of rules and regulations and red tape and all kinds of things that contribute to those costs going up. And Britain has become, over the years, a very costly society for those businesses to deliver those products to people. And what you have to do with reform is you have to lower those barriers, lower those distortions that lead to higher costs, so that you can use competition to drive down price and drive down cost. And if you can do that in what I call like the lifeblood sectors of the economy, the things that really matter to people. If you can do that, then you can deliver cheaper prices across all of those products. And I think if people start to see that they're able to get lower prices, they're able to have more of their money. And there is a tax cut element to this as well. You need to create a dynamic economy. The UK economy is heavily taxed, much more so than comparative economies like the US and other G7. So that tax cuts are part of this. I don't want to suggest that they're not part of this. They are. But you have to do all of it together. And the problem with doing it is there are lots of very powerful incumbent companies in all of those sectors who will fight very hard to preserve the status quo. That's why when Liz Truss talks about I'm prepared to be unpopular, what she means is I'm prepared to do what needs to be done to lower those costs. And it will be a fight. You know, you're going to have a series of fights on these issues going forward, and they have to have the stomach for the fight.
OK, Shankar, I'd love to talk to you again about this in much more detail, because I think you probably hit on the nub of something which is incredibly important that we don't hear enough about, but we have a very busy show, and I know that you're a very busy man. So come back again and speak to me soon. Shankar Singham there, international trade expert and government advisor. Now, as we were saying, Liz Truss has been very busy up there in conference, firefighting a lot of it. She's been speaking in the last half an hour about the tax U-turn during a visit to Selly Oak in Birmingham. Let's have a listen to what she said, hot off the press.
What we've done is we have listened to what people said on this issue. It wasn't a core part of our growth plan. What our growth plan is focused on is helping people with energy bills, getting business moving, and we're here at this fantastic new development in Birmingham, creating jobs for the future. That's what the plan is about. It was becoming a distraction, so that's why we immediately changed that policy, and that's the kind of government we are. We do respond when there are concerns, and we act quickly.
Viewers will have heard you not answer the question about whether you trust your Chancellor, given the scale of the mistake that you say he made. Are you sure you don't want to say you trust your Chancellor?
I work very, very closely with my Chancellor. We're very focused on getting the economy growing. And that's what people in Britain want. We're facing difficult economic times. We're seeing rising interest rates around the world, very serious issues with energy prices and inflation, and we've acted decisively. If you remember, people were facing energy bills of up to £6,000. We put in place the energy price guarantee. The average household won't have to pay more than around £2,500. And what we're focused on is getting on with the job.
OK, viewers will note that you still haven't said you trust your Chancellor. Next thing, all over conference here, it says, in Liz we trust. But why should viewers, why should people at home trust you to deliver what you say you're going to do? Look at your agenda: benefit uprating, planning regulations, environmental changes, childcare regulations. Your MPs have shown they can stop you doing things, and they say that they're going to stop those things as well. How on earth can you deliver your agenda now?
Well, look at what we've already delivered. We've already delivered the energy price guarantee from the 1st of October, making sure people aren't facing these huge bills going into winter. We've already delivered on reduced stamp duty, helping homeowners. We've already delivered on keeping corporation tax low, so we can bring in investment into fantastic cities like Birmingham. And we will continue to deliver. It's vitally important that we grow the economy. That's what's going to help people get on in life, help people with those high-wage jobs that we need to succeed as a country.
Do you welcome Penny Mordaunt this morning making clear her views about what should happen to benefits rising in line with inflation? Are you listening to Penny?
Well, on the subject of benefits, we have not yet made that decision. And of course, there will be discussions about the way forward on commitments like benefits, on how we deal with future budgets. But I'm very clear that going into this winter, we do need to help the most vulnerable. In addition to the energy price guarantee, we've also made sure the most vulnerable households have an extra £1,200. And this government will always help people get on in life whilst making sure the most vulnerable are protected.
Do you welcome the Leader of the Commons making public her views on this matter?
Well, as I've said, no decision has been made yet on that issue, and I look forward to having those discussions.
You're facing a second massive cost of living crisis, which is the one on mortgages. People are facing a doubling of the amount that they've got to pay every month now. Now, you clearly thought, because of your energy price plan, that people couldn't afford an extra £1,000 a year on their energy bill. What makes you think people can afford hundreds of pounds a month on their mortgages, and can they expect help?
Look, I understand people are worried about the cost of living. They're worried about inflation. That's why we have acted decisively on the energy price guarantee. We're also doing what we can to help homeowners through stamp duty reductions. The reality is, though, that interest rates are set by the Independent Bank of England. They make those decisions on the basis of what's happening with inflation and other factors. The energy intervention that we have done is likely to curb inflation by up to 5 points, so that has a positive effect. But ultimately, what we're seeing around the world in the wake of Putin's war in Ukraine is interest rates rise. So the Federal Reserve, for example, has pushed up interest rates. So we will do, what we can to support people, but ultimately it is a decision for the Independent Bank of England.
I mean, that's an argument about the cause of why interest rates are going up. I asked about whether people could expect help. People's entire salary is going to be eaten up by their mortgage next year in many, many cases. 1.8 million people have to renegotiate their fixed mortgage next year. Do you understand just how scary that is for lots of people? And can you say the government will be there to help them?
I understand it's a very, very worrying time for people. Let's remember where we were 4 weeks ago. People were facing energy bills of up to £6,000. We've helped with those energy bills across the board. We've helped businesses who could face going out of business through a business energy scheme as well. And we're also reversing the increase in national insurance to put more money back in people's pockets. So yes, these are difficult times, but we will do, as a government, what we can to help people get through, at the same time as making sure we're building the positive economy of the future, because ultimately it's economic growth that is going to deliver the higher wages, the greater opportunities for people that are going to enable us to succeed in the future.
Yesterday, the energy regulator warned that there could be blackouts over this winter. That's something you said in the leadership campaign you would not let happen. Are you contemplating defying your Chancellor and buying many years of Norwegian gas at close to current prices in order to secure supply?
Well, what I have said is, first of all, we will move forward on our own energy security. So that's more renewables here in the UK, it's more nuclear power here in the UK, and it's also moving forward faster with using North Sea facilities. But we are looking at long-term energy contracts with other countries, because as well as making sure we've got a good price, energy security is vitally important. And we never want to be in a position again where we're dependent on authoritarian regimes for our energy. That's why we're in the situation we are now. That's why many European countries are in the situation we are now. And that's why we're determined that we become more energy independent.
Hang on, so you're planning to borrow to buy years worth of gas, increasing the deficit at almost record high prices, and you think that's a good deal?
Well, I've not signed any deal, but what I'm saying is that Britain's energy security is vital, and what we will be doing is always looking for value for money. Of course we will, but it's important that we have that long-term energy security. And what's happened in the past is we've ended up being dependent on the global spot price, and we've seen the effect of that. We've seen the fact that people are facing bills of £6,000, and I never want Britain to be in that position again.
You think the markets will be happy with maybe tens, if not hundreds of billions of pounds
more
borrowing?
This is speculation. No deal had been signed, but as I'm very clear about, we're completely focused on fiscal discipline. We will be bringing down the debt as a proportion of GDP over the medium term, but making sure we've got energy security is clearly vital for our country.
In order to basically square the books, do you think you're going to end up raising the retirement age, the pensionable age, beyond 67?
Well, you're asking me to speculate about all kinds of decisions that haven't yet been made. But what's first of all important is that we dealt with the energy prices people were facing. We've helped to curb inflation through that intervention. We've reduced taxes to get the economy growing. We're going to be doing economic reforms in areas like moving faster with building projects, moving faster with transport projects to get the economy going. And that is what we need to do because we are facing a very difficult international situation, a slowing global economy. So yes, I will do what it takes to fix those issues.
Finally, are you enjoying being Prime Minister?
I am. It's a challenging role. It's a challenging time. But what I am focused on is delivering for the British people.
Is it harder than you thought?
I came in with very clear expectations that this was a tough time for our country. But I'm prepared to do what it takes to get us through these difficult times, to get us through this difficult winter, and to come out stronger as a country. Thank you.
Liz Truss there in Birmingham, wearing the obligatory fancy dress uniform for any Prime Minister talking about the economy, which is a hard hat and a high-vis jacket. I don't know about you, but she looked like she was sort of boring herself, didn't she? I'm so tired of the cliches. I will deliver, I will deliver. All they seem to have at the moment is this money that they're giving us for our energy bills. That is literally all she seems to have to sell. Thomas said only the left-wing media and politicians are calling it a U-turn. This is obviously the backtracking on the higher rate of tax. Everyone else calls it a change of mind or direction. I don't think that's true, Tom. I mean, in the US, the highest rate of tax, so the equivalent of 150 grand a year, which is what this applies to, is 32%. And she's now refusing to bring it back down from 45. It does feel in this country like the idea of low tax has become something you aren't allowed to say. Alan says, what's wrong with the so-called U-turn? You make a decision, you realise it was a wrong decision, so you correct it. It was the right thing to do. Taylor said, I feel sorry for Liz. We should call the party of knives, and the leader is Gove. The Prime Minister will not follow, the MPs will not follow the PM. They will not give her a chance to run this country. There certainly feels to be quite a bit of truth in that, isn't it? But I'm just not sure, Taylor, and anybody else who feels like this, that it's a good idea to feel sorry for your brand new Prime Minister. That's how I felt a bit today, watching her, stood there on the building site. I feel a bit sorry for her. That's not good. We shouldn't be feeling sorry for our Prime Minister at this stage. Right, moving on now, some other news. The inquest into Chris Kaba. Do you remember this story? This was the young black man. He was shot by police in South London. This inquiry has opened and adjourned at Southern Coroner's Court. The 24-year-old was killed following a car pursuit on the 5th of September, leading to a number of protests across the country. Our London reporter, Alice Porter, is outside Southwark Crown Court for us this morning. Hello, Alice. Bring us the latest on this very sad story, if you would.
Hi there, good morning. Yes, there have been some emotional scenes here outside Southwark Coroner's Court where the family of Chris Kaba gave a statement to the media here asking how this could happen to an unarmed man. The family of Chris Kaba have accused the Metropolitan Police of racism and say that this wouldn't have happened if he'd been white. Andrew Harris was the coroner who opened the inquest today, and he started by offering his condolences to the family, and he then confirmed that Chris Kaba had died after a gunshot wound to the head. We then had a statement from the IOPC. Now, they're the police watchdog, they're independent, and they're investigating what happened and see if there should be criminal charges brought against the officer who has been suspended whilst this is taking place. The IOPC, their lead investigator, confirmed that Chris Kaba had been shot to the head after a gunshot had gone through the windscreen. He was given first aid but was taken to King's College Hospital, where he sadly died a couple of hours later. Now, this inquest has been adjourned today whilst the IOPC continue their investigation, but the family of Chris Kaba say that it could take up to 6 to 9 months, and that is far too long for them to have justice. And this is going to put enormous pressure on the Metropolitan Police, which is currently in special measures after a number of scandals such as Child Q. And so with a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, all eyes will be very much on him to see how the events unfold, particularly with his IOP investigation.
Alice Porter there in London at Southern Crown Court. Now, after the break, a shocking new revelation that 3,000 active members of our armed forces are relying on benefits to make ends meet. How could it possibly be right that our troops that we send to the front line are themselves on the breadline? But before that, a look at this morning's news with Rosie.
Very good morning. It's 10:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The Chancellor is set to bring forward his medium-term fiscal plan in an attempt to reassure markets. Kwasi Kwarteng was due to present it on the 23rd of November, but it's now understood he'll publish it later this month. The Office for Budget Responsibility's independent forecast will also shift forward. The Prime Minister's also under pressure to outline her plan for benefits and if they'll rise to match inflation. The Conservatives will attempt today to shift the focus from the economy and onto immigration. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, will tell the Conservative Party conference that she's considering new laws to make it easier to deport people who come to the UK illegally. She's expected to promise to allow immigration that grows the economy but end the abuse of the rules, and to ask France to do more to stop boats crossing the Channel. Former nurse Lucy Letby will go on trial at Manchester Crown Court today, charged with the murders of multiple babies. The 32-year-old is accused of killing 7 babies and attempting to kill 10 more between 2015 and 2016 while working in the Countess of Chester Hospital. She denies all of the allegations. The inquest into the death of Chris Kaba, who was shot by police in South London, is due to be opened this morning. It will then be adjourned while the police watchdog investigates. The 24-year-old was killed after a police car chase last month. Kaba was unarmed. The officer who shot him has been suspended from duty. The first preliminary hearing of the UK's COVID public inquiry will begin today. Families who lost loved ones in the pandemic are expected to attend, and they're hoping for reassurance they'll be able to share their stories with the inquiry directly. It's expected to hold its first evidence hearings in the spring of next year. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. It's GB News.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning, it's 10:34 on Tuesday. This is Bev Turner on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning. Thank you for joining us. Let's return to Birmingham now and the Conservative Party conference. We're going to talk to Tory MP for Lichfield, Michael Fabricant. Good morning, Michael. How are you? How is conference?
Bev.
Are you having a lovely time?
I'm very well.
Did you have a very late night?
Time, and
Did you have a very late night?
Can't you tell I'm can't you tell I'm croaking? I'm croaking because I had such a fantastic evening. And in fact, everyone's having a very good time at conference. I think people on the platform are having little shaky moments at times, but I can tell you that the delegates are all very, seem in a very good mood. They were quite depressed, I think, on the Sunday, but things have picked up one hell of a lot.
Well, good to know. I like your positivity, Michael, because out here in the real world, it looks like it's an absolute shower of shame, to be frank, particularly with the U-turning.
I wondered what you were going to say just then.
I'm very professional, don't you worry.
What you were...
But, you know, that U-turn on the top rate of tax yesterday has left a very bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, not least the fact that it happened in such a short period of time, and it raises concerns about whether she can be trusted, whether Liz Truss can be trusted to make decisions which she's going to stick to, or is she just going to blow with the wind?
Well, all politicians have to blow with the wind up to some extent if they want to stay in government. I actually thought the 45p cut, although not that it was got to 45p yet, but the 45p cut was a sensible idea because it only raised £2 billion, and most economists said actually there would be so much tax evasion and lack of investment that it would cost the Exchequer more by actually doing it. But you know what? The timing was wrong. I think Kwasi recognises the timing was wrong. I further understand that Liz Truss didn't even know that Kwasi was going to announce this. So I think Kwasi looked suitably, how can I put it, suitably shamed yesterday when he spoke to conference. And I don't think we'll be making mistakes like that again.
Of course, it's easy to forget, Michael, that most of her MPs wanted Rishi Sunak to be leader. It was the party itself, the party members who voted her in. That automatically means that she's batting on a very sticky wicket from the off, is she not? Is it that she just doesn't have the backing of the party, and so she's feeling a little bit... I'm kind of going to use the word bullied, but I don't mean bullying in the true sense of the word. But maybe she feels a little ganged up on because maybe the party, the MPs, are not behind her.
I think you ask me longer questions than I give you answers, Bev. But anyway, you know, it's an interesting point you make. I mean, the vast majority, of course, of party members would have preferred for Boris to stay and not actually have any change at all. And personally, I think it was a big mistake. I've been on GB News before saying, you know, Boris should stay, but hey, you know, that's gone. Look, people, the party has to accept, the parliamentary party has to accept that the Conservative Party is a darn sight more than just 300 or so MPs. It's the hundreds of thousands of party members out there which makes this party work. It's the hundreds of thousands behind me at the party conference who realise that it's got to work. So MPs, if they carry on what you're suggesting, will find that, yeah, the general public will say, you know, what a show this is, what a shambles. So we've got to pull together now because we have got a good, strong economic plan, and we've got to take advantage of Brexit, you know, because poor old Boris was shifted across, if you like, because of COVID. We couldn't get all the legislation through. We need to take advantage of Brexit by deregulating. Labour will never do that because deregulation is an anathema to backbench Labour MPs. But if we don't do that, you know, we haven't taken really every single advantage we could out of leaving the European Union and control from Brussels.
Michael, if you want to have a competition on words per minute, you're definitely going to beat me on that one, so don't worry about that. Michael Heseltine has had a little go at her this morning, of course, which is not good. Some older voters particularly will remember Michael Heseltine working for Margaret Thatcher, a very well-respected MP at the time, and he said that she's packed her cabinet with cronies off the back benches, and she appeared to have no coherent plan behind her mini budgets. How will she feel about that kind of attack?
From Michael Heseltine. I just lost you for a second because did you say Michael Heseltine?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, well, Michael Heseltine has been a terminal moaner ever since he left the government. I mean, he criticised John Major, he criticised David Cameron, he criticised Boris, and surprise, surprise, he's now criticising Liz Truss. I think Liz Truss will say, oh my God, who said this? Michael Heseltine. Oh, well, That's pretty, standard procedure. You get these people now in the House of Lords, and they're sort of very, very semi-detached. They're not even semi-detached. They're in their own park on an island somewhere, and they love bitching. But you know what? Party members don't like people who go around bitching and being disloyal, and actually most of the general public know that he's a has-been.
Well, if we're talking about popularity, Michael, can we talk about your arrival at conference? Because you literally had a physical attack, did you not, from some of the less supportive members of the Birmingham public? Didn't somebody actually shove you as you walked into the building?
No, that was reported. As I like to say, stories of my death are greatly exaggerated. No, what did happen was somebody who should have known better directed me right into the middle of the crowd. So a crowd of demonstrators who had turned up on the Sunday to demonstrate. It hasn't been like that yesterday or today. And people were shouting at me in my ear. One guy was blowing a trumpet in my ear, a plastic one, and I grabbed it off him and chucked it away. He looked quite astonished. Had another young lad bouncing around me saying, but nobody touched me. But I tell you what, there has to be real questions about the policing. And part of the problem is that the entrances to the conference this year are far and few between. And where they had the demonstrators meant that everybody, not just me, I was joking last night about this, but years ago I used to work for the BBC, and I was wearing a BBC lanyard as part of my disguise, because I had it all ready, you see, to say to people, don't shout at me, I'm just a lighting engineer, or, I'm just a sound man. But nobody believed me, and I think it's the hair that's the giveaway. But there you go. But no, nobody touched me, but there has to be questions asked about the policing.
Michael, it's going to take more than a lanyard to disguise you to the members of the public there in Birmingham. Just giving you a little bit of a tip there. You're rather a distinctive character. Let's just talk about benefits at the moment. What is going to go on with the benefits in the hands of the Conservatives? Penny Mordaunt has been telling people that she supports benefits rising in line with inflation. Other figures in the party have said the opposite. Prime Minister is neither denying nor confirming that's the plan. What's going to happen, and what do you want to happen?
Well, look, we all want benefits to stay as they are and rise with inflation. We all want no extra taxes. We all want to be as rich as we are at the moment, except we want to be even richer and for poor people to be rich. But, at the end of the day, I guess there are going to have to be cuts. But where the cuts will be, I have no idea. Maybe there won't need to be cuts. Maybe that the main part of the Chancellor's package, which was not controversial, will generate the extra income, which will mean that actually we won't have to cut anything. But don't ask me, don't ask Liz Truss, because there's a whole procedure now going on in the Treasury looking at all this, and that won't be resolved for some time. But interesting times ahead of us, I must say.
Absolutely. Michael, nice to talk to you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Keep that lanyard around your neck. In fact, ask Tom Harwood. He'll give you a GB News one. Much more fashionable than those old BBC ones.
He told me GB News couldn't afford a lanyard, so he's just wearing a standard one.
We can.
Get me a GB News lanyard. I'll be wearing it.
We'll get you a lanyard. We'll get you a mug. We'll get you all. I've got a pen here. What else do you need? Right. Thank you, Michael, so much. Michael Fabricant, there, Conservative MP. Well, he's always a character, isn't he? Right now, gear change. A nurse today faces trial. This is a terrible story. I'm sure you will have heard this. It's one of those stories you go, well, surely not. She is accused of multiple baby murders, which are alleged to have taken place at the Countess of Chester Hospital, where she was working in June between 2015 and 2016. Lucy Letby is her name. She denies all allegations. Our Northwest reporter, Sophie Reaper, has this update.
The trial will begin here today for 32-year-old Lucy Letby, the nurse who's been accused of the murder of 8 babies and the further attempted murder of 10 babies. Now, in terms of charges, there are 17 charges against her, and that's because one of the babies is subject to a murder charge and an attempted murder charge. Now, Lucy Letby denies all of the allegations against her. She allegedly carried out these incidents between June of 2015 and June of 2016 while she was working as a nurse on the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital in Cheshire. Now, the 32-year-old is in custody, although she did appear here at Manchester Crown Court earlier this year in July, but that was via video link from HMP Bronzefield. She spoke once throughout the 80-minute-long hearing, and that was to confirm her name. Now, the trial here today is expected to last for around 6 months, and that's due to the sheer complexity of the case, but we will bring you updates on that as we move forward.
OK, thank you very much, Sophie. Really shocking story, that, isn't it? Sophie Reaper there, our North West reporter. Now, nearly 3,000 serving armed forces personnel are relying on benefits to make ends meet. That is right, you didn't mishear that. A parliamentary question by the Labour Party revealed that thousands of members of our armed forces who could be sent to war at the whim of our politicians, of course, are currently claiming universal credit just to get by. The number of veterans claiming benefits also rose by 12% to 38,000 people. So, to discuss this in more detail, we're joined by John Speller, Labour MP, former Defence Minister and Vice Chair of the House of Commons Select Committee. John, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. You were Armed Forces Minister. Is this an unusual situation, or has Labour just spotted an opportunity to grab a good headline? Is this something that we should all be outraged about?
Well, I don't think it's a good headline. I think it's pretty shocking. But at the moment, what it's showing is a disregard for our forces. And everyone focuses on equipment. But essentially, as we're seeing in Ukraine, it's actually the personnel that matter. So we've got those on benefit. We've also had a report since then showing that the contractors for doing the maintenance on their homes, they've had to put out a big apology for delays and incompetence and really some very unpleasant but even dangerous situations in housing. The Ministry of Defence and the government have got to take a better care of the most important part of our armed forces, which is our servicemen and women and their families.
What kind of salaries are they on to mean that they have to also be applying for universal credit?
Well, I think it also depends very much on their circumstances as well, and of course there is progression that takes place in the ranks. But quite often you have young personnel, particularly young soldiers, with young families, and they need to therefore have a living wage, a wage that can actually enable them to maintain their families without actually being on benefit. I think that, your listeners will be slightly shocked to hear of the numbers that are involved, but also the figures regarding veterans as well. And it's unclear at the moment as to who's going to be the Veterans Minister. There was a separate Veterans Minister. That appears possibly not to be the case. We'll see when the government reshuffle finally sorts itself out. And there's been a big increase in interest in Parliament in the situation of veterans. I'm not sure it's shared in the government at the moment.
John, can I just read this statement to you from the Ministry of Defence, because I'd love to hear your reaction to it. They say, our armed forces perform an incredible service for our country, and we have developed a package which reflects that. We've introduced a range of measures to support our personnel, including the biggest pay increase in 20 years, freezing daily food costs, capping subsidised accommodation charge increases to 1%, and increasing get you home and home to duty rates by 7%, saving families up to £3,000 per child per year by extending wraparound childcare and subsidising education for children of our personnel. So it sounds quite impressive. What are they getting wrong?
Well, firstly, I'd like to know, with the expenditure on children, how that divides up between the officers and the other ranks, because there's a lot of money spent on private education, but other ranks don't benefit from that. You mentioned accommodation, and I've just mentioned the fact they've had to write to all their people living in their properties to apologise that the new contracts haven't been working properly. Again, subcontractors not properly managed and letting them down. And of course, an increase comes after several years of very low pay increases, if not freezes, which was clearly having an impact on morale and the ability to recruit and retain. So some of it's catching up, and some of it, quite frankly, I don't think will bear scrutiny. And all the blah blah about them valuing the forces, they always say that, but frankly, the actions don't always follow the talk.
Do you think the military remains an attractive career option for enough young people in this country, John?
I think it still has great attraction, and it provides great opportunity. And for many youngsters, it's a great way of getting on and moving up. And they very often acquire skills that are of immense value when they come back into the civilian workforce, as obviously they will. However, I think that the actual conditions that they're put under maybe don't reflect that, and therefore they're not getting that balance right. And so it's still a great career in all of our armed forces, but at the same time, I don't think that the Ministry of Defence and the Treasury in particular really understand the need to maintain that and to maintain morale. And the idea of cutting down our armed forces, our soldiers, to 72,000, the smallest sort of army since the Napoleonic Wars, I think has been claimed, quite frankly sends the wrong message. It says that they're a declining business. Our military are immensely professional, but they deserve not only our thanks and respect, they actually deserve a proper deal.
Well, I couldn't agree more. John Speller, Labour MP, thank you. And thank you for raising awareness for this. It's nice to know that there is somebody fighting on behalf of our troops here in the UK. Thank you. Now, returning to our top story. So how has yesterday's U-turn on taxes gone down in the constituency of the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak? Our reporter Anna Riley went to the Tory stronghold of Richmond in North Yorkshire to ask the locals what they think.
It's the constituency of former Chancellor Rishi Sunak and a safe Conservative seat for the party since the 1900s. But what do voters here in Richmond, North Yorkshire, think to the Conservatives and their U-turn on plans to scrap the 45p rate of income for high earners?
It was a case of if they didn't do something, they would be even more of a muddle than they are now. But yeah, it's always a sign of a guilty person when they just do a sudden U-turn. It's a bit of a shambles. I think I would sack both of them, to be honest with you. Bring back Boris, all is forgiven. The old cheese and wine party doesn't seem quite such a bad thing after all.
I thought it was a very poor idea in the first place because there's obviously a lot of people who don't have any sort of savings or anything like that. So anything that would do more to support public services and give more money to local authorities is good for me.
I'm pleased that they're reducing tax. It's early days yet. I think it's far too early to start making criticisms. I think most criticism comes from people who have their nose put out of joint by the whole thing, personally.
Well, they shouldn't have done that in the first place, and the government are rubbish, and they don't think about anybody who's got very limited income, and they're supposed to be levelling up. They seem to be levelling down.
One sandwich shop owner in the town has backed the U-turn, but still wants the government to do more to help businesses like his.
There's only so many times I can put my prices. As you see, the price has gone up. And they're marked on there because all the time the prices go up all the time. I mean, to give you an idea, my mayonnaise has doubled in 3 months, 4 months. The chicken's gone up 60%. But you can only pass some of that on to the customers. I've had to put the price of hot food up because of obviously the new costs of energy. The uncertainty is what businesses don't need because we have to plan 6 months, a year in advance.
With the majority of people here supporting the U-turn, only time will tell how the government's tax and spend plans will sit with voters. Anna Riley, GB News, Richmond.
It's easy to forget, isn't it? I said earlier about how we got to this point in the first place, which was the sort of three horsemen of the apocalypse, wasn't it? It was Nadhim Zahawi, Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid, who all basically got rid of Boris. And then we had 2 months trying to find a new leader. And then we had the Queen's passing, and now we've got Labour Party conference, now we've got Tory Party conference. I just kind of like to get them back to doing a bit of politicking. I don't know, just me. You've all been getting in touch with your views. Thank you so much. Gary says, having just reached my 50th birthday, I thought things couldn't get worse. I've been unable to work for 3 years now due to ill health. I'm sorry, Gary. He says, I struggle to get by. I appreciate the help I've had so far with the cost of living, but to hear Liz say that we support the vulnerable is laughable. All the tax cuts so far do little for us unable to work, those of us who are unable to work, and to not help us further, in my view, is criminal. But Steve says, me and my Susie, hello Steve and Susie, are in our 70s, and it's fair to say we have seen a few governments come and go. The hysteria at the moment should be ignored. Give this lady a chance. We do need to give this lady a chance, I agree, but as I said, we shouldn't be feeling sorry for her at this point. We should really be admiring her and feeling inspired by her, shouldn't we, in some way? Right, so that's the first hour out of the way. Keep your views coming. GBnews at gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first of all, here's very important weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin. A fairly grey day for many today, with a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain around, but the southeast staying dry and pretty mild, and skies starting to brighten across northern Scotland later too. Big area of low pressure to the north of Scotland up by Iceland, and these weather fronts draping around it are dangling across the UK and slowly edging their way southwards, bringing the cloud and a couple of zones of rainfall. Edging away from the central belt of Scotland, northern Scotland is turning brighter, and the rain never reaching East Anglia or the southeast. In fact, much of the Midlands and eastern England will probably stay dry, but fairly damp across Wales, southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland seeing rain on and off. Quite a mild day, though, especially with a bit of brightness across the southeast. We could squeak up to 20 Celsius. Obviously not feeling all that mild with the breeze and the rain across Wales. And that rain will pep up across Northern Ireland this evening and push back further north across Scotland. In fact, tonight, things turning wet and windy for many, especially as we go through the early hours. Some heavy rain moving in, gusty winds. It will make for a very mild night. Look at those temperatures staying in the mid-teens across the south. So not a cold day on Wednesday, but not a very pleasant start. A lot of heavy rain across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and gusty winds. A wet morning for Wales. That rain will spread across the Midlands, and eventually we'll see some rain coming into parts of eastern England too. The heavier rain should clear from Scotland. The winds will steadily ease a bit through the day, but it's going to be a blustery day. Temperatures actually dropping a little through the afternoon and certainly feeling fairly fresh as the heavy showers come in on those strong winds later on. And plenty more showers to come through Wednesday evening too, staying blustery. Those winds, I say, could be pretty lively on Wednesday. There is a Met Office warning in place. Staying fairly lively, the weather through the rest of this week as well, with sunshine and showers on Thursday, rain spreading south on Friday, but most of us looking like having a dry start to the weekend, at least.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good morning, this is GB News with me, Bev Turner, on your TV, radio and online. Thank you for keeping me company. Have you downloaded the app yet? Do. It is really very good. You can then listen to or watch GB News wherever you are. I'm with you until midday with the very latest from the Tory Party conference up in Birmingham. Big speakers today include Suella Braverman and Therese Coffey. And I'm going to be speaking in just a moment to the superb commentator, June Slater, on the state of our care homes. You have been sending me your thoughts as well. Keep them coming. I do read them all. GBviews at gbnews.uk. But first, it's time for the latest news with Rosie.
Thanks, Beverly. Very good morning. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. Now, in an exclusive interview, the Chancellor has told GB News his medium-term fiscal plan will not be brought forward. It will be delivered as planned at the end of November. Kwasi Kwarteng is under pressure to give more details on how he'll reduce the country's debt following turmoil on the markets, which saw sterling plummet after the mini-budget just 11 days ago. The Prime Minister is also under pressure to outline her plan for benefits and say if they'll rise to match inflation.
We have not yet made that decision. And of course, there will be discussions about the way forward on commitments like benefits, on how we deal with future budgets. But I'm very clear that going into this winter, we do need to help the most vulnerable. In addition to the energy price guarantee, we've also made sure the most vulnerable households have an extra £1,200. And this government will always help people get on in life whilst making sure the most vulnerable are protected.
The Justice Secretary, Brandon Lewis, has defended the government, saying they've protected vulnerable people for a long time.
We've got a track record in this government, both under Liz Truss with the statement that Kwasi Kwarteng made just a couple of weeks ago, but even before that, consistently of supporting the most vulnerable people in society. That has been a guiding light for us. But what you've also seen in this package is the Prime Minister and the Chancellor delivering on what she promised she would do, which is giving us a lower tax economy to drive more growth and to get growth of the likes we haven't seen for some time now.
Well, the Conservatives will attempt today to shift the focus from the economy and onto immigration. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, will tell the Conservative Party conference that she's considering new laws to make it easier to deport people who come to the UK illegally. She's expected to promise to allow immigration that grows the economy, but, quote, end abuse of the rules. She's also anticipated to ask France to do more to stop boats crossing the Channel. In some other news now, several train companies have reported a glitch that's preventing customers buying tickets with their bank cards. Customers at Greater Anglia and Northern have been unable to buy tickets on the company's apps or websites, and South Eastern have said they've got problems for customers buying tickets in person at stations too. All three operators say they're investigating and looking to fix the issue as soon as possible. Former nurse Lucy Letby will go on trial at Manchester Crown Court today, charged with the murders of multiple babies. The 32-year-old's accused of killing 7 babies and attempting to kill 10 more between 2015 and 2016 whilst working in the Countess of Chester Hospital. She denies all of the allegations. The inquest into the death of Chris Kaba, who was shot by police in South London, is due to be opened this morning. It will then be adjourned while the police watchdog investigates the incident. The 24-year-old was killed after a police car chase last month. Kaba was unarmed. The officer who shot him has been suspended from duty. The former Formula One boss, Bernie Ecclestone, has arrived at Southwark Crown Court to enter a formal plea on fraud charges. The 91-year-old faces 1 count of fraud by making false representations and failing to declare £400 million of assets to the UK Exchequer. The charge relates to a trust that was set up for his 3 daughters. Prosecutors say the alleged offence took place between July 2013 and October 2016. International news now, and Ukrainian forces have made their most significant gains in the south of the country since war began, seizing back more territory in areas that have been annexed by Russia. The breakthrough in the south mirrors recent advances in the east, despite Russia ordering the mobilisation of 300,000 troops and threatening nuclear retaliation. Meanwhile, Russian lawyers are saying they're overwhelmed by requests for help of those at risk of being sent to fight in Ukraine. Back here in the UK, and the Prince of Wales will deliver his first speech today since he gained his new title. Prince William's going to be at the Science Museum in London to address the United for Wildlife's Global Summit. He helped found the organisation in 2014 with the aim of protecting endangered species from the illegal wildlife trade. His speech will highlight the damage caused by wildlife crime and the impact on biodiversity and local communities. You're now up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it develops. Now let's head back to Beverley for To The Point.
Good morning. This is GB News with me, Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on TV, radio and online. If I say so myself, we've got a very good show lined up for our final hour. Here's what's coming up this morning. Prime Minister Liz Truss may be facing another pushback, this time from MPs over an unwillingness to raise benefits in line with inflation. As day 3 of the Conservative Party conference continues, it's going to be a test of her mettle as to whether she will give in to more pressure. We'll have the very latest from Birmingham. And a new study finds that a quarter of care home workers will resign within the next year as the cost of living crisis deepens. We can't afford to lose any more. I'm going to be speaking to a managing director of a care home group and the brilliant social commentator June Slater. Finally, but very importantly, I think, a report from Women Count that reveals that 96% of CEOs in FTSE 100 350 companies are still male. 96%. Why is that the case? The lack of gender diversity is costing our economy billions. I'm going to speak to one of the co-founders of Women Count later on to find out why that has not changed in all these years. We've got all of that coming up and much more across the programme. Get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, as I say, Liz Truss is potentially facing another rebellion over the government's controversial mini-budget as day 3 of the Conservative Party conference continues in Birmingham. It follows yesterday's U-turn by the Chancellor, abandoning that cut to the 45p tax rate. Our political reporter, Catherine Forster, explains how yesterday's dramatic developments unfolded.
Evening, Prime Minister.
Only 4 weeks into her premiership, Liz Truss swept in, saying she didn't care about being unpopular. And on Sunday, she doubled down on the plan to cut the top rate of income tax from 45p. She and the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng were not for turning. Until they did. As the sun came up over the second day of party conference in Birmingham, attendees woke to a tweet from the Chancellor admitting they had got it. They had listened. The cut was not going ahead. The Prime Minister tagged along in a similar fashion, outlining that she also got it. Michael Gove and Grant Shapps, 2 former Cabinet Ministers banished to the backbenchers by Truss, had led the charge among Tory MPs to stop the move. Polling showed the public were largely against it, rattling Conservatives in seats previously thought safe. Number 10 realised they didn't have the numbers to get it through Parliament. Whilst the move may have eased some Tory nerves, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves warned the damage was already done.
The government now need to get a grip. They should reverse their budget, recall Parliament to do so, and rethink their whole approach, which is doing such damage to ordinary working people and businesses across our country.
So all eyes were on the Chancellor as he made his speech to conference.
What a day. It has been tough, but we need to focus on the job in hand. The plan put forward only 10 days ago has caused a little turbulence. I get it. We are listening and have listened. That is why, shortly, we will publish our medium-term fiscal plan, setting out our approach more fully.
MPs are relieved that what many saw as a politically toxic policy is gone. But the party is still divided, and some see the U-turn as a sign of weakness. Liz Truss, it turns out, can and does turn. And there are limits to how unpopular even she is willing to be. Kwarteng and Truss will hope they can move on from this, build back support and prove their critics wrong. Catherine Forster, GB News.
It's amazing. Look at Nadeem Zahawi there, clapping and kissing Liz Truss, and you think, hang on a minute, a lot of these roads that we're at now lead back to you. Honestly, MPs, right, let's further analyse this with our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Hello, Tom. Nice to see you. I hope you're having a very pleasant conference. I'm sure you're making the most of it. Right, just go, Tom. You tell me what's happening down there and what you want to tell me. I'm sure you've got some very important news to impart.
Well, yes, it is a very tricky time for the Tories here in Birmingham. Of course, we had that seismic U-turn yesterday, which has made the mood here on the floor, which was, on Sunday at least, rather chipper. It has turned it a little bit sour. Now people are still going to the drink stews, people are still enjoying themselves at the parties, but it does feel like there is an air of gloom over this conference in a way that was not there at the start. Why do I say that? Because at least at the start you had a group of sort of righteous fighters who believed they had their person in number 10, and so they would be damned the popularity. They are going to get their reform agenda, their ambitious reform agenda through. They were going to change the country. Well, perhaps some of the wind has been taken out of their sails over the last 48 hours, and now you have two groups with room to be, or reason perhaps, to be gloomy. But maybe this is overemphasising what is just a fairly torrid few days, more than 2 years potentially, before the next general election. I've been speaking to Conservative MPs over the last couple of days who, almost all of them, believe there is a chance to turn things around, that the election is far enough away that getting all of the difficult stuff done early on will or could potentially lead to benefits down the line. But it's going to be a tricky way to get there, and one of the most concerning things that some have said to me is what this U-turn yesterday indicates with regard to future policy. One of the biggest parts of the growth plan of this government is not the measures on tax, it's not the measures on energy, but actually, crucially, perhaps most crucially of all, it's the supply side reform packages that we are expecting to be hearing about over the coming weeks. Now, the worry for some Conservative MPs is that if the 45p tax rate was too politically contentious to reduce back to where it was even under Blair and Brown, then how on earth are the politically contentious areas of migration reform or planning reform, these big areas that could well be very consequential for economic growth? Does this government have the political capital? Frankly, does it have the fight to push it forward? All you need is 35 members of Parliament voting against this government, 35 Conservative MPs voting against this government, and that wipes out its majority. And given the organising we've seen from certain people now on the backbenches, perhaps those who used to be in Cabinet, a lot of attention has focused on Michael Gove over the last couple of days. Well, if those ringleaders, if those rebel ringleaders can gather together just 35 MPs, this is not any longer a government with any sort of majority at all. And to some extent, with a lot of these discussions, it's looking more like there's a hung parliament than a sizable Conservative majority. That's the pessimistic view. The optimistic view, on the other hand, is that this is a setback that was dealt with quickly, and there is more to come. In fact, one of the interesting points, I think, that has been not picked up enough upon yet is this idea of the benefits row. Clearly, some people around the Prime Minister do not want benefits to rise in line with inflation. They want them to rise in line with average workers' wages instead, thinking that's a much more fair way to do it. Why should those with state support be getting more proportionally extra than those who do not get those universal credit payments. It's an argument, but interestingly, it's not an argument that the government has on the record committed to advancing quite yet. I was speaking to the Transport Secretary, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, just earlier today, who said that this was a decision that still had yet to be taken. So clearly, perhaps what we're seeing here is a learning. Is this government now ready to roll ideas, roll the pitch, as Liz Truss said over the weekend that she thinks she didn't do enough of before the 45p rate? Perhaps we're not going to see these big rabbits out of the hat on policy, and we're going to see more of a softer approach, rolling the pitch, seeing what the temperature is before diving in with those big policy changes.
There are still some wins that she could have, Tom. We've got Suella Braverman talking today, the new Home Secretary. According to reports, she's going to announce, and tell me if you've heard the same thing down there, she's going to announce plans for a blanket ban on Channel migrants and anyone else entering the UK illegally from claiming asylum. That could certainly put the Conservatives a little higher in the polls again.
It certainly could, and there are many MPs, particularly for the more red wall style constituencies, that have been really raising this as a very, very crucial issue for their areas. Clearly, there's a great depth of feeling in this country that, yes, this is a welcoming country towards those who do the right thing, who come here legally, who fill those skills gaps that our new points-based immigration system allows for, getting the doctors and the nurses that we need, for example. But those who do not apply by the points-based system, those who try and cross in outside of the rules, who do not meet the requirements for language or education or income, why should they jump the queue, and why should this country be getting them ahead of those who do the right thing applying legally? That's a very strong sense of feeling in the country, a sense of fair play that is intrinsic to the British character. And clearly, this is a battle that the government has been fighting for some time under various guises. There are a lot of legal issues here with regard to what the United Kingdom can actually do, of course, bound by various international treaties, conventions, and indeed groups as well. So Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, of course, used to be the Attorney General, someone with a legal mind, will be looking very, very closely at what is possible here, because clearly a lot of things have been tried in the past and then struck down in the courts. That's not something that the government will be wanting to do again.
Well, let's hope that she knows what we can manage to achieve. Thank you, Tom, so much. Tom Harwood there at Conservative Party Conference. This afternoon, between 4 and 6, we'll have Patrick Christie on air to bring you all of the Patrick Christies. Kit Malthouse, Secretary of State for Education, is going to be speaking. So is Therese Coffey in Health. We've got Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Secretary of State for Transport. She's got quite a lot to deal with. Brandon Lewis, Secretary of State for Justice, is going to be talking. And, as I say, Suella Braverman, also Home Secretary. So all of those people will be setting out their stalls at the conference between 4 and 6 this afternoon. So stay with GB News and Patrick and Tom and Liam, who will all be up there to bring you the latest on that. So first of all, though, our reporter Jack Carson has travelled to the seat, the Tory safe seat of Solihull, to find out how viewers are reacting. Good morning, Jack. Nice to see you. What is the mood like there? Are they all fully behind Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and the rest of them?
It's a real mixed feeling here in Solihull, actually. I've been speaking to residents up and down this high street this morning, and there's a real mix of people that were happy that Kwasi Kwarteng U-turned on that decision regarding the top rate of tax, but also people that were very unhappy that he had U-turned and they wanted to see that tax reduced, and also they were very happy that bankers' bonuses had been reduced as well. But also in terms of voting intention, in the last week we've seen polls which have said that the Labour have a 33-point lead here, but actually it's a real mixed feeling about voting intention here on the ground. Some people would go from Conservative to Labour, some more to the middle ground of Liberal Democrats, but others just not vote at all. And that's the problem in seats like this in Solihull, which have a 21,000 majority for the Conservatives. This is a safe seat that they're going to have to try and win at the next election, and they need to persuade people to try and come out and still vote for them. One voter I spoke to earlier said that Liz Truss needed more time time, and that they hope that her speech tomorrow at the Conservative Party conference would reassure them about the way forward. So people hear a real mixed reaction, but hoping that Liz Truss's speech tomorrow can provide them some reassurance.
Thank you so much. Jack Carson there in Solihull, just around the corner. It's part of Birmingham, isn't it? Where the conference is. You have been getting in touch. Al has said this new policy is not getting much of a chance. The hounds are baying. No mention of the financial state in other countries, as per the COVID situation. I've heard politicians talk nothing but the state of the finances in other countries. Every time Liz Truss has been interviewed, she keeps talking about Ukraine and kind of blaming it all on that, on global issues. That's a very new thing, isn't it? That never used to happen, did it? Jay says Conservative MPs are scared to go to an election. They'd be mad to do so now, Jay. She still has a very good majority. Liz can threaten them all with going to an election if they prevent her making progress on anything she wants to do. I'm not sure you should blackmail your own MPs with going to an election. And Iona says, I am bored with hearing about how bad government is doing when they have no ideas apart from saying the UK is a terrible country. And Mike says, get your act together, Tories. 2 years is a blink in time and you can't afford to do anything other than pull together. Otherwise, it's going to be bye-bye. Yeah, it is a very short period of time. In fact, that's what Michael Heseltine was saying today about Liz Truss. He said she hasn't got time to make any significant changes, and maybe she just has to be honest with the country about that and says, well, it's a bit of a mess and it's going to be like that for 2 years. But we can't live in that state of pessimism, can we? Right, after the break, what is the state of our care homes? Do you have somebody in a care home? Please let us know your experience of that. GBViews at gbnews.uk. A new study indicates that a quarter of care home workers may leave their jobs within the next year due to the cost of living crisis. We've already lost too much of them because of vaccine mandates, haven't we? Some care homes aren't even allowing visitors as they are still sticking to COVID rules. What is the situation? This is something I feel really strongly about. More of that in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin. A fairly grey day for many today with a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain around, but the southeast staying dry and pretty mild, and skies starting to brighten across northern Scotland later too. Big area of low pressure to the north of Scotland up by Iceland, and these weather fronts draping around it are dangling across the UK and slowly edging their way southwards, bringing the cloud and a couple of zones of rainfall. Edging away from the central belt of Scotland, northern Scotland is turning brighter, and the rain never reaching East Anglia or the southeast. In fact, much of the Midlands and eastern England will probably stay dry, but fairly damp across Wales, southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland seeing rain on and off. Quite a mild day, though, especially with a bit of brightness across the southeast. We could squeak up to 20 Celsius. Obviously not feeling all that mild with the breeze and the rain across Wales. And that rain will pep up across Northern Ireland this evening and push back further north across Scotland. In fact, tonight, things turning wet and windy for many, especially as we go through the early hours. Some heavy rain moving in, gusty winds. It will make for a very mild night. Look at those temperatures staying in the mid-teens across the south. So not a cold day on Wednesday, but not a very pleasant start. A lot of heavy rain across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and gusty winds. A wet morning for Wales. That rain will spread across the Midlands, and eventually we'll see some rain coming into parts of eastern England too. The heavier rain should clear from Scotland. The winds will steadily ease a bit through the day, but it's going to be a blustery day. Temperatures actually dropping a little through the afternoon and certainly feeling fairly fresh as the heavy showers come in on those strong winds later on. And plenty more showers to come through Wednesday evening too, staying blustery. Those winds, I say, could be pretty lively on Wednesday. There is a Met Office warning in place. Staying fairly lively, the weather through the rest of this week as well, with sunshine and showers on Thursday, rain spreading south on Friday, but most of us looking like having a dry start to the weekend, at least.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:26 on Tuesday morning. This is To The Point with Bev Turner on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning. Now, a new study has warned, as if we didn't need the warning, that over a quarter of care home workers are likely to leave in the next year, with the cost of living being the main factor in the decision. And some care homes, 2 years on, are still denying access to elderly relatives due to COVID restrictions. Grandchildren are still being banned in some homes, which puts age limit on visitors. This is something I feel really strongly about, and I want to understand it a bit more. And I'm joined now by social media campaigner June Slater. June, good morning. Lovely to see you. I know you feel as strongly as I do about this. It's not getting the attention it deserves, is it, post-pandemic? What a state our care homes are in.
Considering the industry was already 140,000 carers short, I'm absolutely aghast that they had the nerve to sack 20,000. I'm looking at testimonials here from management of various care homes where they've sent letters of commendation to carers, where relatives, friends and other staff and the residents themselves have thanked them profusely for their continued care. And these people are sacked and down the road. Now, you talk about government U-turns. I'm really anticipating that a government makes a U-turn on this, because I think a government that's making U-turns is a strong government, a government that's listening, that's accepting that it can't get all the things right. We are victims of them getting many things wrong for 2 years. So if Liz Truss is U-turning, Let's Soak Coffee can do the same. Because at the end of the day, this is one issue that needs a massive U-turn on. Reinstate the carers, give them a bung. We can send money for weapons. We can send it to carers, I'm sure. Apologise. Get them back in the industry. We've lost good people with years of experience. Add to that, I don't think people realise just how much this impacts on the rest of our healthcare. Currently, 13,000 beds in the NHS are occupied by people who are fit enough to be released. Most of these people will be released into care homes, but as you've said, because they're still continuing with restrictions, they can't go back, and some staff shortages don't help that matter. But the thing about the restrictions, some care homes are using this because it's easier to run the care home without visitors coming in and out. Now, the trouble is a lot of these daily visitors, and again, I've got testimonials here from people in message box, they actually fed some of the dementia patients. They made sure they ate the breakfast. What's happening now, carers are telling me they've only got the time to change the incontinence pads in the morning. Then they leave them sat there. They're not dressing them because that takes time. They're leaving people in bed. I've got a harrowing story of a man who went in for respite. Respite, that's a limited period. Sadly, we locked down and he was left there. He was in a wheelchair. His relatives used to get him out and support him to walk just to get his muscles moving, back in the chair, back into bed. He had a life. He watched the birds in the garden. He had his family visiting him. He was left so badly in a care home for months on end that when they went to see him, his legs were actually folded up underneath his knees. He couldn't even straighten them out. That's a care home understaffed. That's a care home suffering from rules they should be challenging, not accepting. And that's my gripe.
I don't know about you, June, but I've never met a poor care home owner. Some of the richest people I know personally own care homes. They are very profitable businesses.
The thing is, when you think the cost that they accept for meals per day is between £4 to £6, £6 being the high end, they're the Rolls Royce of care home facilities. Where's the profit going? Let's make a bit less money. Let's treat this a bit more vocational. When you think that if you want to know how strongly the public feel about this, the Together Declaration that was responsible for bringing a halt to the mandate in the first place for the health workers, are bringing out a new campaign about the sacked care workers. We are not going to let this go. We, members of the public, are going to fight tooth and nail for yet another U-turn by the government to reinstate these good, decent people with years of experience who were left with their own lives in tatters, using food banks, unable to seek employment. Not everybody's happy about being sacked when they've done anything bad even. So when you've been sacked and you haven't done anything wrong, let's just retrack here to the drug agencies. Normally, the big pharmaceutical companies, let's just remember one thing about these industries. They are investment companies that happen to make drugs. So when we're following guidelines, remember that. When you get a drug company that is basically selling a product that doesn't do the job it's supposed to do, there should be questions asked. When you get every other single drug on the market that comes with health warnings that have been monitored for 5 to 10 years, and the general public are being not stronger than persuaded, insisted upon to take a medicine when they've said, hang on a minute, normally this takes longer, I'd like to wait.
But do you think, June, sorry to interrupt you, but do you think those care home workers, young, a lot of them very young, who left because they didn't want to have the COVID vaccine because maybe they'd had COVID and they had natural immunity, they didn't want it, will they come back now? Or are they just feeling too demoralised and frankly insulted that they were having to do that? Will they come back if they're asked to come back?
I think there's mixed reactions there, because at the end of the day, what you've got to weigh up here as far as health is concerned, in European countries, I had a second home in Austria. If I was in Austria now, showing an antibody test for antibodies in my bloodstream, I wouldn't be asked to get the vaccine. Because as I spoke to my Austrian GP, he said you wouldn't need it because you'd already have protection. And we have to be careful that people don't end up with ADE, antibody dependent enhancement. Now, if as a country, a very well-run country, may I add, if they can acknowledge these health benefits of having recovered from a virus, why isn't our government? Why is our government so blasé and careless as to insist that every single person ought to have it, despite the fact that natural immunity after recovery is apparent?
Well, it's certainly a topic in terms of care homes that seems to have been swept under the carpet and nobody seems to want to get these people back. We need them back. June Slater, don't we, in order to get the NHS moving. The knock-on effects of this are enormous. Thank you so much for your contribution. If you do want to get in touch with June, she's very busy on social media, particularly on Facebook. And as you hear, she hears from all sorts of families all the time about these particularly distressing stories. Now, after this quick break, an annual report from Women Count reveals that 96% of CEOs of the FTSE 350 companies are, guess what, male. It's costing the economy billions. But before that, here's the news.
Good morning, it's 11:34. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The Chancellor has exclusively told GB News his medium-term fiscal plan will not be brought forward and it will be delivered as planned at the end of November. Kwasi Kwarteng's under pressure to offer details on how he'll reduce the country's debt following turmoil on the markets, which saw sterling plummet after the announcement of the mini-budget. The Prime Minister's also being urged to outline her plan for benefits and whether they'll rise to match inflation.
We have not yet made that decision. And of course, there will be discussions about the way forward on commitments like benefits, on how we deal with future budgets. But I'm very clear that going into this winter, we do need to help the most vulnerable. In addition to the energy price guarantee, we've also made sure the most vulnerable households have an extra £1,200. And this government will always help people get on in life whilst making sure the most vulnerable are protected.
The Conservatives will attempt today to shift the focus from the economy and onto immigration. Home Secretary Suella Braverman will tell the party conference that she's considering new laws to make it easier to deport people who come to the UK illegally. She's expected to promise to allow immigration that grows the economy, but, quote, ends abuse of the rules. She's also anticipated to ask France to do more to stop boats crossing the Channel. The former nurse, Lucy Letby, will go on trial at Manchester Crown Court today, charged with the murders of multiple babies. The 32-year-old's accused of killing 7 babies and attempting to kill 10 more between 2015 and 2016 whilst working in the Countess of Chester Hospital. She denies all of the allegations. The inquest into the death of Chris Kaba, who was shot by police in South London, has been opened and adjourned while the police watchdog investigates. The 24-year-old was killed after a police car chase last month. Kaba was unarmed. The IOPC have said their investigation's expected to last 6 to 9 months. They also announced the officer who shot Mr. Kaba has been informed they're under criminal investigation for his murder. The first preliminary hearing of the UK COVID public inquiry will begin today. Families who lost loved ones in the pandemic are expected to attend. They're hoping for assurance they'll be able to share their stories with the inquiry directly. The inquiry is expected to hold its first evidence hearings in spring of next year. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Now, the annual Women Count 2022 report has found that the lack of women in top FTSE 350 jobs is costing businesses billions. A shocking 96% of CEOs in the FTSE 350 are men, revealing that there has been very slow progress towards gender equality at Britain's biggest firms, despite entry-level recruitment often being close to 50-50. So I'm very happy now to be joined in the studio by Lorna Fitzsimmons from Women Count and a former Labour MP for Rochdale. Lorna, good morning. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I think we've won the feminist gender equality battle. It's all fine. Everybody understands now that women should be treated the same as men. And then I see a statistic like this and I realise we've gone nowhere.
Oh, it's just, you feel as though it's Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You know, girls leave school with better qualifications than boys. More women in the world have degrees than men. And there's only 40% of women in the UK have children that are working, have children at home between 0 and 18.
Right.
So it's not about our capability and it's not about caring.
Yeah.
We are simply choosing to promote men more than sometimes better qualified women.
Just run that by me again, because you preempted my first question there, which was going to be, isn't this because we choose to have children and then choose, in inverted commas, sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice, to have time off work to raise the children? Is that not what's happening here?
No, I mean, there is a big issue in relation to the the national problem of childcare, etc. And the caring responsibilities are still out of kilter, as we discovered during lockdown.
Yeah.
But in the end, 60% of women in the workforce don't have children at home. So theoretically, there's enough of us to still get to the top. What's happening is we have a different risk appetite for promoting women versus our male counterparts.
So why is that? Is that because, you know, I have a theory on this. I think it's because men aren't very good at cross-gender networking. So what I mean is there are a lot of jobs given out, aren't they, from the blokes in charge to the other blokes who are soon to be in charge. And a lot of those jobs are kind of... And I genuinely don't think it's blokes doing it deliberately. I would just want to point that out. I don't think they sit around and go, let's not employ any women. I don't think that's happening. But I think the feeling is, oh, I probably can't go for dinner with her to talk about work because it might look like a date. Or I can't go to the pub. Whereas they go to the pub with their mates. They go for a meal. And there's that, like, sexual tension.
So I think it's at many levels, and that is one level. And especially with Me Too, everybody is super cautious and aware, and they have to be. And networking and having a strategic network of people, you know, is very important to be able to be invisible and getting on, and people thinking, I remember Lorna.
Just
so
being in the minds
of
each other, yeah.
But the research, you know, we're now into behavioural economics. You know, we've heard, and there's some amazing research, and it shows that like promotes like. So actually, men promote more men and women promote more women. So if you are a FTSE female chief executive, you promote more women to your executive committee, you have more women in the very important profit and loss roles that are the segue to getting into being chief executive, and you have more women executive directors, so on the main board. And so it is clear, the more women we have as chief executives, the more women will get promoted.
Yeah, and bring them through.
And it's not about women better than men, it's about balance is better.
What different skills do women bring to the workplace than men might have? And I don't like this idea anymore that we all have to be sort of gender homogenous. I like the idea that we have different strengths and different weaknesses, commonly men and women.
Yeah, equity isn't about women being better. Is all the research shows that the best decision-making team in the world is a gender-balanced team with ethnicity within. And it doesn't matter about qualifications. So we should stop talking about best person for the job. We have to talk about best person for the team. So often, for example, in financial services, because of all the financial scandals, they're saying you've got to have a financial qualification, you've got to be... So you've normally got about 4 blokes that have got accountancy qualifications, and then they say for the chief finance officer appointment, well, we need the best person for the job. Well, actually, no, you don't. You need difference.
To blend and to balance that, who else is
you
on
are
that team?
on the money, because the research shows it's the biggest difference is gender. The reason gender is so material is because the biggest difference between men and women is between men and women. Biological, physiological, sociological, lived experience.
Yeah.
And it's that difference that makes us better. And so you are right. But we're not mad as human beings. We have been taught...
Oh, some are.
Okay, well,
how long have you been in this building?
Yeah, OK. Yeah, all right. Well, us included. Yeah. But the point is that since we've been on the savannah as the, like prehistoric times, we have all been taught that it's called herd mentality. We all know it as herd mentality. Where if you don't fit in and you get, like, kicked out of the tribe, you get eaten by the monster, right? OK. So we all try and fit in. And in history, nothing ever as good has happened when you're singled out for your point of difference. Women, well, we were witches, weren't we? The slave trade, the Holocaust. Whenever you're singled out for your point of difference, it doesn't go so well. And now what the research is saying, well, actually, it is your difference that's your superpower.
Yes.
And therefore, what we need to do is encourage people to be able to, safe enough to bring their difference to the table. And the more gender balance you have, the more everybody feels they can bring their difference.
Do you think with the move now towards more flexible working, which is what a lot of parents, and I am going to say particularly working mums, because traditionally we have carried more of the load in that area, have been calling for, is that going to improve this situation to keep women in the workplace?
It is. One of the best examples is in mining. Now, nobody would ever think... Mining?
There's a true northern lady from Lancashire drawing on a route.
One of the biggest global mining companies is a company called BHP Billiton, based out in Australia.
Right.
They were, until recently, run by a fabulous Scottish guy called Andrew McKinsey, who was the chief executive. And about, 5-6 years ago, he basically said to the market, we are going to make every level job grade in our company from the bottom to the top 50-50, men and women. And the market went mad, his competitors went mad, everybody said, you're a loony, you can't do it, it's mining, you're in some of the most dangerous, inhospitable places in the world. He's done it.
And?
Right? And the safest, most profitable mines in his business, gender balance.
Yeah.
And the men led the campaign for flexible working in those mines, and they're the safest.
Gosh. It doesn't surprise me, though, because if there was quite a bit of research a couple of years ago proving that boards that were more balanced are more profitable.
Yes. So the whole thing about the report shows, we've got all this stuff, you're doing a lot of coverage of Conservative Party conference. It's all about getting 2.5% growth on the British economy, what we call GDP. If you got every company in the FTSE that doesn't have 50% women on their executive committee to perform the same, it actually gives you 2.7% on GDP, £77 billion. Wow. This is how material to the bottom line, to companies and the economy this is.
Amazing. Lorna, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. Come back again, won't you? Because I think it is so important, especially if it is going to make everybody more profitable, happier,
and you can
better
see
businesses.
The report on our website, www.exactpipeline.com.
Got it. Fantastic. Lorna Fitzsimmons there. Right, let's move to another story. The NHS working conditions have become so bad that many workers are quitting their jobs to work in pubs and shops instead. NHS leaders have warned that staff are skipping meals just to feed and clothe their children. And with the Chancellor confirming £18 billion worth of public spending cuts in the foreseeable future, the NHS could be thrown into real crisis. So how did we get here? Let's speak to former nurse turned barrister, Rebecca Butler. Rebecca, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, just before we go into this as a news story, would you mind just telling me your own story of how you went from being a nurse to then deciding to leave and become a barrister?
Well, I went into nursing with 4 science A levels, and it was personal circumstances only, because I'd lived abroad, that dictated why I couldn't go into medicine at the time. So my entry into nursing is highly unusual, and then I decided to transfer across to law. Rather than go into medicine sort of after my career in nursing and after I'd had my children. So it is quite an unusual story for me, actually, and not at all typical.
What we're hearing now, of course, is that lots of NHS workers, including nurses, are actually leaving the NHS not to go and train to be barristers, but to go and work in the local pub or to work in the local supermarket. Why, Rebecca? What is driving these decisions?
I fundamentally disagree with the premise of the question, with the greatest of respect, because I've looked into the data this morning, and there are more nurses than there ever have been on the professional register. And, the Nursing and Midwifery Council will tell you that there are 750,000 currently registered nurses in that professional body. In the NHS, there are more nurses than there ever have been, at over 300,000 on the workforce. Now, if you are telling me that a fully qualified staff nurse who goes in at entry level into the NHS at £27,500 is taking a pay cut on their basic hourly rate of £5 an hour to go and work in the retail or the hospitality sector, I simply don't believe it. And if I may say, what I think you are looking at, and certainly the article that your producer sent me, is actually some sectors of nursing are lining themselves up for strike action. Now, this in the context of them having their pay review body report in February of this year. And without question, the government granted the pay review body requests, which actually doesn't happen that often. But this summer, the lowest paid in the NHS received 9.4% wage increase. So I'm not sure that the question you've posited actually represents the true picture of the nursing workforce. There are vacancies, but that is simply because the government has funded 45,000 new posts.
So do you think the NHS is actually quite a welcoming and happy and fully moralised place at the moment to work, and enthusiastic? That's not the impression that I get.
Bev, the headline about the NHS is that actually it's one of the best employers on the planet. So good that sometimes it forgets the patients, because it does really, really care for its staff extremely well. The pay, I know nobody ever thinks nurses are well paid. Nurses certainly don't think they're well paid, but then nobody does. Grumbling on about nurses' pay has been going on since I was nursing. So, the conditions of work during the pandemic were the biggest reasons for people to leave the profession, but only 14% left the profession specifically because of the pandemic, because of fear, very, very much fear, taking the infection home to the family, and the working conditions were extremely challenging. But those that left on account of the pandemic were easily replaced by people like me, who went back into the workforce to help during the pandemic. So those numbers were neutral. Now, the working conditions compared with, say, an Amazon warehouse are significantly better. I mean, you're working in a postgraduate qualified environment. You've got a very good salary. You've got a very good pension. At the end of your work, you have paid for annual leave. People don't question you when you go off sick for 10 days a year, which is the average.
OK, Rebecca, thank you so much. Nurse turned barrister Rebecca Butler there. Sorry to rush you. I do want to go to our royal correspondent, because the Prince of Wales will attend the United for Wildlife Global Summit at the Science Museum in London today, where he's going to deliver a speech. So let us go now to Cameron Walker to tell us more. Good morning, Cameron. What are we expecting today from the new king?
Good morning, Bev. Well, the Prince of Wales is set to deliver his first keynote speech in his new title role, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact that he has chosen a campaign which he has long campaigned for over the course of his life, ever since he was 18, when he went on a gap year and spent some time in Africa, and that is protecting endangered wildlife species. And today is all about the important role of the private sector, and what I mean by that is finance. How do people who are looking at the money transactions and how that is being, how ivory and tiger skins, for example, are being transacted through different bank accounts, and how transport, how people scanning luggage can see illegal products in there. Now, the illegal wildlife trade is, according to Prince William and his people, pushing a lot of species to extinction, and it's worth about $20 billion a year. So in 2014, Prince William set up the United for Wildlife Fund, and perhaps his global influence around the world is bringing loads of different organisations together under one roof. And just to give you an idea as to exactly the kind of work that this particular organisation does, in August, a guy called Muzu Cromer was sentenced to over 5 years in prison for conspiring to traffic $7 million of rhino horns and elephant ivory, which meant 135 animals were killed. So he's going to be speaking here a little bit later on today, and he's expected to say there are still too many criminals who believe they can act with impunity, too many lives being destroyed, and too many species on the brink of extinction due to this heinous crime. So Prince William will be here a little bit later on, and I think it's something we will continue to see him do in his new role as the Prince of Wales, continuing to campaign on issues that he is passionate about.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cameron. Down there at the Science Museum in London, where the Prince of Wales, William, will be this afternoon. We will let you know how that goes, of course. Now, don't go anywhere. Liam Halligan's got an exclusive sit-down with the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. You won't want to miss that. Gloria and Mark will bring all of that to you in just a moment. I'm done for today. I'll be back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Here's your Tuesday weather.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin. A fairly grey day for many today, with a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain around, but the southeast staying dry and pretty mild, and skies starting to brighten across northern Scotland later too. Big area of low pressure to the north of Scotland up by Iceland, and these weather fronts draping around it are dangling across the UK and slowly edging their way southwards, bringing the cloud and a couple of zones of rainfall. Edging away from the central belt of Scotland, northern Scotland is turning brighter, and the rain never reaching East Anglia or the southeast. In fact, much of the Midlands and eastern England will probably stay dry, but fairly damp across Wales, southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland seeing rain on and off. Quite a mild day, though, especially with a bit of brightness across the southeast. We could squeak up to 20 Celsius. Obviously not feeling all that mild with the breeze and the rain across Wales. And that rain will pep up across Northern Ireland this evening and push back further north across Scotland. In fact, tonight, things turning wet and windy for many, especially as we go through the early hours. Some heavy rain moving in, gusty winds. It will make for a very mild night. Look at those temperatures staying in the mid-teens across the south. So not a cold day on Wednesday, but not a very pleasant start. A lot of heavy rain across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and gusty winds. A wet morning for Wales. That rain will spread across the Midlands, and eventually we'll see some rain coming into parts of eastern England too. The heavier rain should clear from Scotland. The winds will steadily ease a bit through the day, but it's going to be a blustery day. Temperatures actually dropping a little through the afternoon, and certainly feeling fairly fresh as the heavy showers come in on those strong winds later on. And plenty more showers to come through Wednesday evening too, staying blustery. Those winds, I say, could be pretty lively on Wednesday. There is a Met Office warning in place. Staying fairly lively, the weather through the rest of this week as well, with sunshine and showers on Thursday, rain spreading south on Friday, but most of us looking like having a dry start to the weekend, at least.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello and welcome to GB Newsday with me, Mark Longhurst, and of course Gloria De Piera, live throughout the afternoon from the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. And here on GB Newsday, we have an exclusive for you. Breaking news: the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng has told us he will not be bringing forward his autumn tax statement as had been expected. The Chancellor, speaking to our business and economics editor Liam Halligan in Birmingham, confirming that the date of the statement would still be